Welcome to the live Bible study hosted by Andrew Wommack Ministries and Charis Bible College. Tonight, you'll learn truths from the Word with believers around the globe. Submit any questions you have in the comments and share this broadcast tonight with your friends.
Hello and welcome to our Tuesday night live Bible study. I'll tell you, we're going to have an awesome time tonight. We've had a great time just visiting, getting ready for this. So it's going to be special. We have Carrie Pickett with us as our host. She's a regular here. But we have tonight Congressman Randy Forbes. And man, you've been a congressman for 16 years in the U.S. Congress. And then you were with what, Virginia or West Virginia?
I was in Virginia. I was in the Virginia State Legislature.
For 8 years,
For 12, actually. And then I was in the House of Delegates there and then the State Senate.
Wow.
And then went to Congress.
And lately, he has founded and is the president of the Congressional Prayer Caucus. And maybe when we get right into your study, you could give a little bit of information about that. But we want to let you know that we have our phone center open. We have scores of people in there ready to take your calls if you need prayer, if you have any questions. The number is 719-635-1111. And there's also a way that you can interact with us. You can get notes from this deal. We also give away a free giveaway. Was this last week's or is this
No,
this
this is this week's, and last week was your Healing Journey Volume 6 that we gave away.
Oh, that was awesome. That has some of the greatest testimonies on there. It was tremendous. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie and let her give you all the information about how you can interact, send us your questions, and you'll be blessed if you get Congressman Forbes to answer some of your tough questions.
Yeah.
Send him all of the questions you wished you could have asked a politician.
Well, we welcome you tonight. You know, one of the things that makes the Tuesday Night Live Bible Study so powerful is that you do get to have interaction with us. So whatever forum that you're watching on right now, if you'll notice in your comment section, you can send a question to us. And then we get them right here, and we're going to be able to give them to Andrew and Congressman Randy. And so please do that because your questions are excellent. Also, what makes this Bible study so powerful is that we send out notes. After every Bible study, we produce notes that we send to you so that you can continue to study them throughout the week, because we may be saying things and you're saying, oh, that's so good. I wish I could hear that again. These notes will allow you to go back through that. So if you have not registered for our Bible study, go to awmi.net/Bible study, and then what we'll do is you'll register and we'll get you these notes and they're going to come to you. And by registering, then you'll be eligible to win a free gift. And every week we have a free gift. Last week, like Andrew said, we had the Healing Journeys volume number 6. There's been so many healing journeys. We're up into 6 stories.
And this has a testimony of a man that was raised from the dead, and it's really good.
It's good. So,
and this, I've been teaching on this on TV. I taught 9 weeks, I think, on this, and then I just taught on this last night. Here at the Business Summit. So anyway, this is awesome.
So last week's winner of the Healing Journeys was Patricia Piccarelli, if I'm pronouncing that right, Piccarelli. So we're going to be sending that to you. So please go ahead and register. And then if you have questions, not just the questions to send in, but if you say, I would like prayer and there's something that you're going through within your life, our prayer ministers are standing by. So 719-635-1111. And they're going to be able to give you advice and counsel if there's other things that even Andrew shares tonight. If there's more material you want to hear on that subject, they can direct you. So that's going to be really good. And just real quick, I want to give a few announcements. You know, you are part of our family here at Charis and Andrew Wommack Ministries. So we, as you know, besides the Tuesday Night Bible Study, we have all kinds of conferences going on just to help you. So on many different subjects, currently right now is the Business Summit. And so that's why you are in town. So
Congressman Forbes spoke this morning along with Billy Epperhart, Dr. Dean Ranke. I spoke last night. Paul Milligan was teaching this afternoon, Karen Conrad. And I tell you, it's already been powerful. We have seen some lives change, and we've still got all day tomorrow to go.
Yeah, so if you want to know more information about that, go to charissummit.com, and they're going to be able to let you know about that for future ones, and as well maybe how to hear some of this past material that has been shared this last couple days. And then also the Summer Family Bible Conference is coming up. This is a big family conference that we do here every summer. It's powerful. Things for the teenagers, things for the kids, things for the parents. It's phenomenal. The kids ministry downstairs is awesome. So if you say you'd like to do a family vacation, come to Colorado, get blessed. If you want to register for that, please check us out. That's from July 2nd through the 6th. Go to Charis Bible College, and it gives you all the information about that. And then also, healing is here. Healing is Here is probably one of our biggest conferences. We have wheelchairs and crutches and breathing machines left. People come and they leave
We
healed.
saw over 1,000 people healed in 3 days. And I mean, people came out of wheelchairs, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, a young boy that couldn't walk, just running normal.
I just sit in my seat and cry. I'm like, God, you're so good. So you want to come to that. Maybe there's somebody in your life that says they need to really get filled with the understanding of what God's done for them and that healing is theirs. So healingishere.org, that's how you can find out more about the conference and register for that. And then lastly, one of the things coming up is King David. So it's one of the new musicals. As Karis has a department here that does all of our musicals and all of the production is just phenomenal. And it's been going around the world, but now King David is a new one, and that's going to be November 2nd. It's just a one-day event, and you're not going to want to miss that.
Like a world premiere. And it's right before our dedication of this building. Right now, we're occupying about 40% of this building, but on November the 3rd, we'll have our building dedication, and we're going to have Jesse Duplantis and Kenneth Copeland will be here to dedicate that, and it's just going to be an awesome
So if you want to know more about that, thekingofjerusalem.com, and so that's going to be phenomenal. And then lastly, on Monday nights, Truth and Liberty broadcast, and that tends to be where we really share about just faith and government and the role that we can play in this country. And so Pastor Calvin Johnson's going to be here this next June 25th at 6 p.m. You've actually helped a huge part of that, given us a lot of counsel. So,
yeah, let me just introduce Congressman Forbes by saying that I just met him back in December, and it was through David Barton, and we have started a Truth and Liberty Coalition. Matter of fact, last night we had a live cast on that, and it is gaining steam, and there's some wonderful things happening. But David Barton was a part of that, and as we were making plans to get started, he says, you need to talk to Congressman Forbes. And so in December of 2017, he brought him to our lodge here, and me and my staff were just really blessed. I mean, the wisdom. Randy has been at this a long time, and he knows what works and doesn't work, and we're novices. And so he gave us a lot of information that, I mean, has made a huge difference in the way we are approaching, and it's paying off. It's working. So that's where we got to know him, but now he's a speaker at our business summit, and it was great this morning. And so welcome. We are just glad to have you
Andrew,
here.
It's great to be with you and Carrie, and like you said, we've got this rose between us two thorns here tonight, but we're delighted. I'm delighted to be here with you and to look at some of the
And before you get to sharing tonight, you might just briefly introduce what the Congressional Prayer Caucus is, because some may not know about it, and it's really a tool that God's using.
It's a great tool, and we can talk a little bit about that and a little bit about what people watching this program can do for the fight for faith in their own communities and in their own areas. And one of the things, Andrew, you and I were talking about earlier today is that people are struggling today because they don't know how to get facts. They don't know when they watch news what's accurate or what's not accurate. And one of the things that is universally true across our country is about 3/4 of the people in the country today, which is a phenomenal number, feel the country is somehow or the other headed in the wrong direction. They don't know why, they don't know how, they can't get their sense around it, but they don't know who to blame, they don't know what facts to believe anymore. And there's really some phenomenal things that are going on. One of the things that happened probably 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, but as a nation, many people in our country began questioning whether or not there were any true rights and true wrongs. Well, of course, we know with the scriptures there are true rights and true wrongs. We may not interpret it correctly, but the Bible gets it right. We have to figure out what that is. But that was so different than our founding fathers had because, they believed our rights were given to us by God. And so when they came down to solve problems, they may disagree, but they said, we believe there are rights and wrongs. We just have to seek them out and find them. Well, today I had a dean of one major college in the United States that came to me, and he said, Randy, now something is going on in our college campuses, and we think it's permeating through parts of our society. And it's that people no longer believe there are any true facts. And so you imagine the difference with that. 10, 15 years ago, I could go into a group that may be upset about a vote I'd taken or something that I'd done. But I could say, okay, let's sit down and look at the facts. You then analyze, see if the facts are correct. In every situation, about 85% of them at the end would say, we understand now why you did it. That world is no longer out there for us today. And today you go in and talk to groups and they say, no, we get to have our facts and we don't care what you say. And literally college students are walking into professors who grade their papers and throwing the papers back and say, that's your facts. I don't have to accept your facts. Well, that's a scary place for us in our country. And one of the things that happens is we're starting to look at leaders today. And it's a good joke to say everybody in Congress is bad and to kind of laugh and to say all of our leaders are corrupt. The reality is that there are a lot of people in state, local, and federal government who are very committed to the Lord and very committed to the Scriptures. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes the general public doesn't know about that. In Congress alone, the House of Representatives has a weekly Bible breakfast that many members attend. The Senate has a weekly Bible breakfast. There are a plethora of Bible studies all throughout the House and the Senate. But Andrew, as you and I were talking about, we don't ever hear that. And the problem is you can imagine some of these guys who go up there and they're attacked by every attack you can imagine. And then they'll have Christians actually attacking them because they're not committed to their faith, and all of a sudden they just want to throw their hands up and say, why are we doing this? So we need to get our facts and realize that there are people of faith trying to do what the Lord wants them to do in almost every aspect of government.
And Randy, you and I talked about this at lunch, but we not only have the people that are wicked or evil, that's probably not politically correct to say that, but we've got the ungodly that come against anybody who's godly, but then the Christians will attack them if they deviate on the slightest little thing.
It never fails. I mean, we have studied this and analyzed this for years, and we just kind of scratch our heads when we see Christians and we see somebody that's doing so many things, and if they do one thing that may not even be wrong, but they think it's wrong because they've heard it on some newscast or anything, they are ready to throw them to the curb and toss them out. And that's why in many instances we're losing in some of these things. So what we tried to do, Andrew, as you mentioned, in about 2005, we realized we had all these attacks on faith coming across the country, attacks on prayer and our freedom of religion. And what was happening is when you get one member of Congress or two members of Congress or three members of Congress, that's not enough. These issues would be by them before they could even do anything. So we thought, what if we could bring Republicans and Democrats, Protestants and Catholics, charismatic and non-charismatic together and say, what is it we agree on? And that is protecting our right to pray, protecting your right to live your faith the way you think you should live your faith. And we formed the Congressional Prayer Caucus. That went from me to 100 members in the House and Senate. It's now has a co-chair in the Senate, a co-chair in the House. It is incredible the things it's been able to do because 100 or so members would come together and say, instead of finding how we disagree, we're going to find how we agree. And then we created the Congressional Prayer Caucus Foundation, which does the same thing for state legislators. We now have almost 1,000 state legislators that most people listening tonight would have no idea of that are standing for their faith, fighting for their religious freedom and their religious liberty. Does it make a difference? Well, let me give you one example. Today in the business forum that was held right behind the podium, it says, "In God We Trust." Well, when the new visitor center to the United States Capitol was open, it was $621 million of taxpayer money. And we had to vote on it before anybody could see what was in it or knew what was in it. They had a committee that was made by the architect of the Capitol. And so it had passed the House, hadn't passed the Senate. When we finally could get in it, and David Barton and I were the first two that could actually go in there because we had pushed and pushed and pushed. It was amazing how they had taken any reference to faith in our history out. They would not let the American flag be, the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag be in there because it referenced God. Would not let the Declaration of Independence be in there. And they took "In God We Trust" out. In fact, in the main form, it said "E pluribus unum," our national motto. And so we went to bat to try to change that. We asked some friends in the Senate to hold it up. They held it up for a few days, and finally one of them called me and said, Randy, we can't do it anymore. The pressure's just incredible. We've got to vote this out. They're saying we're losing $75,000 a day, and I thanked them for trying. About a week later, my staff comes to me and says, Congressman, you need to sit down. That's never a good thing usually. but
Brace yourself.
But you brace yourself. But they said the bill is coming back from the Senate on the visitor center. And I said, I know, we lost, and we tried, but we lost. They said, no, it's coming back in a stack of UCs. Now, what a UC means for people watching is unanimous consent. So what happened is they made some technical amendments in the Senate, not major amendments, technical amendments. But even a technical amendment has to be approved. So it's sent back over with a bulk of bills to the House, and they just rubber stamp them and put them out there. Well, my staff said, Congressman, unanimous consent means unanimous consent. You do not have to consent. So I literally went to the floor, started at 10 o'clock in the morning, stayed till 10 o'clock at night. I told the leadership on the House side and the Senate side, when that bill comes up, we are going to object to it. And no longer is it going to be one or two people. Our entire prayer caucus is going to come to the floor, primetime TV, and have you explain to the American people why in God we trust isn't in the Capitol. At 10:22 that night, they signed off, and now engraved in stone in the Capitol is the national motto, In God We Trust, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Declaration of Independence, because people stood up and came together.
Well, I was on David Barton's tour, and you have that big, when you walk into the visitor center, In God We Trust.
That's it. That was the In God We Trust.
Well, did you know that? When I saw that, I said, if we can do that in the Capitol, man, a Christian organization ought to have it. And that's the reason I've got it in lights up above our thing.
Let me tell you
inspired me.
Well, let me tell you some exciting
That's
things
awesome.
with it. And this is why people listening at home, they can change this stuff, if they'll roll up their sleeves and do it. We actually passed a resolution that reaffirmed In God We Trust as our national motto. Oh, we got attacked for it. Some of our liberal friends were, accusing us of all kinds of things. But it passed. I think it was 396 votes. Ultimately, they weren't going to vote against it. But we slipped a clause in. We didn't slip it in. They could read it. But it said, and we encourage it to be put up across the country. We took that resolution after it was passed, and we started telling people, hey, just like you said, Andrew, it shouldn't just be up in the Capitol. It ought to be up in my office. You talking about you? I looked in my office. It wasn't in my office.
Yeah.
I went to an elderly gentleman. He's 97 years old, and his name is O.T. Holton. I said, Mr. Holton, I said, can you make me some In God We Trust plaques? He made the most beautiful In God We Trust plaques, brought 100 of them in. We now have 100 of them in offices in the Capitol, including the minority leader's office, the speaker's office, right on down the line. But then we started getting people across the country to put them up. Since that time, we put up over 3.5 million In God We Trust plaques across the country. And why is it important? Because if a student is told that they can't say God in school, and they look up on the wall and there's In God We Trust, it's kind of hard to make that argument.
Yeah.
And so as we look at these scriptures, and Andrew, I know that's what you wanted to look at, one of the things, these members of Congress, just like the people who are listening in, they have struggles in their lives, they have fights. Some of them struggle with health problems and with marital problems, with relationships, with their jobs. But I would suggest to them that Paul would tell us probably the greatest fight we have is the fight for faith. And he told Timothy, he said, to encourage him to fight the good fight for faith. And then Paul on his epitaph said, tell him I fought the good fight for faith. But I would suggest that we're not training ourselves well for that fight. And we need to be preparing and training ourselves. But the other scripture, and the book of Jude, people ask, what's your favorite book? And I'll say, the book of Jude. And they all look at me
Maybe
like,
the first time I've ever heard
I
somebody
agree.
say
it's the first time a lot of them say, and they'll say, and then they just look at me with this pause because they haven't read the book of Jude, maybe ever, but certainly not in the last year or two. But I said, here you got this book. It's just a very small little book. But you had all the Gospels talking about the wonderful good news of Jesus Christ, then all the Acts of the disciples. Then you have Paul's letters outlining the church. Then we hear Peter and James and John basically saying, just hold on, he's going to come back. Well, then we have Revelations that tells us what's going to happen at the end. But right before Revelations, you've got this little book, the book of Jude. And here is Jude, who says a phenomenal thing to us. He says, I wanted to write to you about all these things that are important in your life. I'm paraphrasing now, of course. You know, your marriage, how to do this, how to do that. But he said, I can't do it because I need to send you a major message. And he says, fight for the faith. Mm-hmm. Now, we water it down, make it more politically correct to say contend. That's okay. Mm-hmm. Contend is a good word too, but it's fight. Fight for the faith. And one of the things that we need today is we need men and women who will look at the Scriptures and who'll say, this is not easy stuff. You know, that we're being attacked every day for our own personal faith, and we have to fight for it. But we have to fight for it as a nation as well. Mm-hmm. And so we had these members of the Prayer Caucus, members of the Prayer Caucus Foundation, come together and say, how do we fight? And let's fight strategically and smart. But then the other thing I wanted to read to you, and I know you know this because this is a scripture we all love to quote, but it's in 2 Timothy 1 and 2, and actually through 4, but it says this. It says, first of all then, I urge that entreaties and prayers, petitions and thanksgivings be made on behalf of all men, for kings and all who are in authority, so that we may lead a tranquil and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. This is good and acceptable in the sight of God our Savior, who desires all men to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. Now we quote that, and we all reference that as we need to be praying for our leaders. But I have a little bit of different take on that. It is important to pray for our leaders, but this is what it also says. It says, first of all, then, I urge that entreaties and prayers, petitions and thanksgiving be made on behalf of all men. And then it goes on to say, for kings and all who are in authority. And he tells us why. He says, because God wants us to have an environment where we can all come to a full knowledge of truth. Not going to make us come there, but an environment where we can come. And then if you look at James, James has a wonderful admonition to us because he says, Carrie, if I'm hungry, you can't just tell me, oh, go, be filled, I'm going to pray for you. Mm-hmm. You need to do something about it. Mm-hmm. Well, if that's accurate when people are hungry and we're praying for them, it's also accurate here that if Paul's saying, I want you to do everything, I want you to have entreaties and prayers and petitions and thanksgiving, and then to suggest, but that's enough. Once you've done that, you just walk away. Mm-hmm. Then I don't think James would be accurate. Mm-hmm. And I think what he's saying here is he wants us to fight for the faith so that we can live tranquil, quiet lives in all godliness and dignity, but to create an environment where people can come to a full knowledge of the truth. I'll just say one more thing and then we'll go to the questions that they want. I hear so many people today, especially Christians, Andrew, that just say, well, I don't want to be involved in all that. That's politics and I don't like politics. Well, politics is any time two people come together, it is how we interrelate to each other. Mm-hmm. And so when you get 300 million people coming together, it brings out the absolute worst in humankind. But you taught a series not too long ago on Proverbs. And Proverbs is kind of the way we learn, I think, how to deal with one another in those situations. Mm-hmm. But I would suggest to everybody looking out there today, it's not enough to say, I'm just praying for kings and all who are in authority. I think they have an obligation to do something. And I want to share with you what I think they can do to make that change. One of the things we've seen as most effective is when you'll get a group of men and women, and it doesn't have to be large. Christ had 12 disciples. He picked that number for some reason. Mm-hmm. He didn't make mistakes. You get 10, 12 people that come together weekly and say this. First of all, we're going to help each other on how we fight this fight for faith. We're going to bond with each other. We're going to pray together. We're going to study together. But then start saying, how do we work to change the culture in our city this week for faith? And Andrew, what we're seeing around the country is phenomenal when those groups start linking up with each other and saying, this is what we did in Texas, this is what we did in Norfolk, this is what we did in Boston, and then they start duplicating that. Last thing I'll tell you, David and I were working on some strategies for the country last year. And we were walking out one day, and David gave me an interesting statistic. I haven't verified it, but David's normally never wrong. But he said during the Revolutionary War, only 25% of the people that fought in the war believed in freedom and fought for freedom. About an equal number were against it, fought for Great Britain, and about half didn't care. But the really crucial statistic was that only 8% of the people living in the colonies actually did anything at all for the Revolutionary War effort. Either fought, paid money, wrote an article, did anything. And the next day I came back and I said, David, we've been looking at this thing all wrong. We've been trying to change 75% of the people, 51% of the people. In any culture in the world, 8% of the people who are passionate, committed, can change the culture of a nation. What we have to do is to find the 8% and train them to fight for faith, and we can turn this country around.
Man, I agree. Let me ask some questions before we go to somebody else. But, you know, there's Christians who will say that they don't even believe it's godly for us to even try and influence our culture, that we are supposed to just minister to the Christians, and somehow or another they just give the culture, they see it as an ungodly thing to even try and get in and change it. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think, first of all, I mean, Jeremiah was very clear when he issued he said, you know, fight for the welfare of the cities that you're in and the people that are around. But I don't see how you read Timothy, where it says you want to pray for all men. It doesn't say pray for Christians only. It says pray for all men, and it says so that they can lead tranquil, quiet lives in all godliness and dignity. And I give them this example. Can you even fathom being back with Peter and with Paul and with James, when they feared for their lives every day, when they feared that, Andrew, you and I would be talking, and it wouldn't be somebody who's just going to write a bad editorial about you. They'd literally come in these doors and torture you, or they would kill Carrie, or they would beat me. Can you imagine if those people had been told this, if you will just go out and vote tomorrow, they will not torture Carrie, they will not kill Andrew, they will not beat Randy Forbes. Do you think for 1 minute they'd have said, oh, no, we can't do that. We're just going to sit here and pray? They'd have been flocking out there to do that. And, you know, the same thing is true about impacting the culture. You mean I can't even take a stand in my city or something to change the culture, and then I watch? We had, I believe it was a cardinal in the Catholic Church, but I don't have that statistic or the fact with me now, but somebody who's a Christian leader just a couple years ago made a statement. He said, I truly believe in the United States, my successor will be jailed for doing exactly what I'm doing, and his successor will be killed. And you say we shouldn't do anything to change that culture? I can't understand that, Andrew.
And you know, you've answered another question. Let me just rephrase it differently. But there are people who have said, well, Paul, he didn't ever do anything about having the Christians get out and change their culture. But they didn't have the opportunity.
They didn't have the opportunity.
We got a unique nation that most people have never had, have been given a God-given opportunity to change our culture, and they didn't.
And the other thing, even think about Paul. This last part, I just continue to harp on what I know, but to have an opportunity to come to a full knowledge of the truth. If you're given that opportunity and you don't take it, it's okay. I mean, we're not going to force you to do it. But to think about your grandchildren or your children not having that environment to be able to make that choice in, and that's what it could happen if everybody does nothing.
Our culture has been repressive towards Christianity, and they are taking away the freedom. People feel compelled that they can't make statements like that.
That's right.
I apologize for asking the questions, but
No, I think it's
my
good.
program, I decided I was going to do what I want.
There's certain prerogatives you get.
That's right.
All right, so Carrie,
When you're one of the thorns, you
that's
get to be poked.
That's exactly right.
So we got any questions?
So we have some really good questions, so thank you guys. And then as we're answering these questions, if you have more, please send them in on whatever forum you're in your chat section. So we have a gentleman here on chat. He says, I want to fight the good fight of faith. Tell me, sir, what do I do? And he has a couple of questions here. He says, should I contact in my local city school district or city hall to get a sign that says, "In God We Trust"? or get faith classes back in the public schools for the children who want to know about God? Can we get pastors or someone from the church to volunteer Bible classes within the schools? All of this is a start. I hope you like these ideas. So kind of questions and ideas here.
And I would tell him all the above. And let me just give you an example. I was not too long after we did this resolution, and I gave a floor speech about "In God We Trust" and putting it up. And I had a senator come over to me. I won't mention his name, but you guys would know him. And he came in and said, "I need to talk with you." And I said, "Sure." He said, "Yesterday I had all the firefighters in from my state. And this one firefighter had an insignia on his uniform that said, 'In God We Trust.'" And I grabbed him and I said, "I love your insignia." He said, "How did you come to put that on?" And he said, "Well, it was the funniest thing." He said, "I was sitting there flipping the channel, and it came to C-SPAN, and this congressman from Virginia was on there talking about 'In God We Trust,' and the fact that we needed to put it up. And I looked to my wife and I said, if he can do it, we can do it." And the next day I went in and I ordered it on all of our fire trucks, all of our uniforms, and then they tried to get him to stop it. He won, and he was getting calls from Australia and other places saying, "How do we do it?" We've now had it on over 700 fire departments, police departments to do it. And we have literally men who are like your caller who have gone to their school boards and said, "Look, I will write the check to have "In God We Trust" in my grandson's school." And all of a sudden it's going up. And again, the power of just something as simple as putting that up on the wall. We underestimate those little steps. Andrew, what's the quote? Don't despise the days of small beginnings. I think sometime one of the dangers we have is we sit back and we use the wrong pronoun. We use they. Why aren't they doing this? What should they be doing? Instead of saying, what can I do? The other thing I would suggest to him is this. There is an enormous scriptural power in agreement. Christ would say, "Where two or more touching anything," that just gives a greater power. Yeah. The ability for us to agree and come together significantly increases our ability. Mm-hmm. Coming together in those small groups of men and women who then say, "How do we change it this week?" It's amazing how that multiplies the effect.
And let me just add to that all of these things are very good, but you need to get involved on the local level.
Yeah.
Like I just heard this week that San Diego has put out a book to their elementary school that is promoting experimental sex and being graphic.
Well, even on curriculums, one of the things that's interesting as we look, and we talk about even moral issues, but even historical facts that are in there. We're talking about why our country is so divided. If you do polls and surveys now, it's shocking how many people don't really know what the Constitution of the United States is or the Declaration of Independence. And so by getting input on the local level, it's hugely important.
But see, that statement about what happened in San Diego is having national effect. It's being broadcast, and it affects the psyche of everybody, even the Christians. If people would get involved in their school board and make a local impact, I can guarantee you that the people in San Diego, the majority, do not like what's done. But the few people who've gotten involved are the liberals, and they are writing their own.
Well, let me give you another example. The Air Force Academy, they had a cadet at the Air Force Academy, you probably remember here, and he simply put a verse on his whiteboard. Well, that verse, that one little statement, that one little badge of courage, if you would, that he did, wouldn't have changed the world, but we heard about that. We read about that. And so we literally brought the Air Force in before hearing of the Armed Services Committee. And I said, this cadet can't be here today and his parents can't be here today, but I sure by gosh can be. And I want to know why writing a Bible verse is against the principles of the United States Air Force. The next 10 members of the Armed Services Committee wanted to ask the same question. That resulted in the Air Force changing their protocols on faith and starting to allow one student who dared to simply write something on a whiteboard. And so everybody listening out there, there's one thing they can do that they think is insignificant, and watch what God can do with it. When
I
they
didn't
just
know
take a
that
step.
you actually presided over that, but I remember that, and
Yeah.
I was just praising God. So thank you very
Yeah,
much
that's
for
awesome.
doing that.
Okay.
You were serving in Congress until, it was
2016.
2016.
At the end of December 2016.
And it was because of something they redistricted.
They destroyed my district. 2 liberal judges took it out. But you know, God always
It was a
takes some-
political move. that
Sure
they-
was. But you know, the Lord always takes things, and you know, Romans 8:28 is so true. Everything works out for good, and we're doing some great things and excited about it now.
Man,
Excellent.
thank you for doing that. I heard about that. Didn't know it was you. Got
Well,
another?
you know, we had another question. I think we've kind of answered this, but if there's anything you want to add to it, it says, how can we either be a part of that 8% or grow it to a larger percentage? Because I think, and we had another question here, how do you not feel overwhelmed by all of the negative issues and where to start? So it's that kind of like you want to be part of the 8%, but you feel overwhelmed. Where do people start? And like you said, again, the one small thing, but again, is it local level? Is it
Well,
national level?
first thing, I think we have to learn how to default our eyes to look for the Lord in things, and we have to use discipline. And one of the disciplines is cutting off the news. I mean, because you know, it used to be we'd get news from 6:30 to 7. You get all the bad stuff, and then you'd have some good stuff to overwhelm.
24 hours
Now
a-
it's 24 hours a day, and they're all competing. And what happens is this: when you're competing for news and you're competing to be heard in a saturated informational age, the negative always gets the ear. And so they get more and more negative. Think about this. You walk into the office, not you guys, but most offices, and somebody says, hey, I want you to know, Carrie is doing well. Her and her husband are doing great. Their kids are healthy. Everything's
Right.
okay. You're thinking, why'd you bother me? But if you get that person that says, do I have some gossip for you? They want to. Well, that's
Everybody
what, that's what we're getting. And so
Yeah.
we've got to discipline ourselves at times to cut that off. You know, the second thing though is nothing helps turn that around about doing something positive. So this one small thing, the one in God we trust plaque they get up, the one thing they put on their car, the one thing starts turning that, and all of a sudden you start realizing, I'm part of that 8%.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, one of the things I do is, man, I spend a huge amount of time in the Word, because in the Word you can see situations that make our situation look pale
Absolutely.
in comparison, and yet God pulled it out. And
Yeah.
if you study the Word correctly, it will keep you encouraged. But if you watch the news 24 hours a day, you are going to be discouraged.
And the other thing I always tell people that I'm talking with, it's kind of a 101. Sometimes we need to go 101 before we get to 201. I said, you know, if you want just a basic beginning, and I know you probably said the same thing, go to Proverbs and read the Proverbs for that day.
Yeah.
Got to start somewhere. That's a great
Yeah.
place to start because it kind of changes your whole attitude. And then there's not a day, and I've done it for most of my life, there's still not a day that I don't see something else in there that points to me that I need to do different.
And there's a psalm, I can't quote the exact number, it's in the 70s, I believe, but he talks about, how is this happening? Everything's going, the world is falling apart. And then in the middle he says, then I went into the temple of the Lord, and he saw things from God's perspective, and he winds up just praising
Praise the
God.
Lord.
And you know, David was always great about that. I mean, we think about ourselves getting negative, but David would go down in the
yeah.
pits. He'd say, and then by the end of it, he would have
Yeah.
turned
Joy, soul,
himself.
my soul.
That's exactly right. You know, and we need to know we don't need to kick ourselves for some time. I mean, it is overwhelming. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But the Lord provides a way for us.
I
to
can
get out.
guarantee you, God is not in heaven wringing his hands, wondering,
No.
how can I pull this off?
That's
And if you
exactly
stay
right.
in fellowship with God, he will keep you positive.
Absolutely.
That's right. Well, here we have another question from Haddis on Facebook. So Haddis, thank you for sending this in. It says, Andrew, in Congressman Forbes, what is your opinion of this movement of religions to unite? Many Protestant leaders are now working with the Catholic Pope, and at the same time, Pope Francis is calling for the unity between Catholicism and Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and etc. So what is your opinion on this movement of religions to unite? Positive, negative?
We were discussing right before the thing that sometimes Congressman Forbes gets in trouble, not for what he says, but what the people he associates with. So I'm going to defer to you because I think I would get
Yeah.
you in trouble.
Well,
With what I-
let me say this. Normally, when you talk about blending and merging, you're talking about diluting. Because what you end up doing is cutting everything that you have that's any controversy at all to the side. And the schemes of life, the challenges of life, are the controversial ones. They're the tough ones. And I think the church has done that to a large degree.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think they're two different things. as I told you with our Prayer Caucus Foundation, we bring Protestants, Catholics, we bring all denominations together, and we say, all right, let's sit down in a room. I can still love you, you can love me. Let's sit down in this room and find what we can agree on. Some of the things we agree on is the role of faith itself, the role of prayer itself, how important those things are to defend and protect. That's what I think we should be doing. But most of the time on a lot of the religions, if you really want to blend them, the number one thing they want to take out is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And you know, for us, that's what we base our life on.
I've described it before like a target, you know, where in the center, here's your bullseye and then goes out. There's certain things you cannot compromise on. But these things, the further you get away from the center, there are things, not that you compromise, but that you don't make an issue out of.
Yeah. And I think sometimes as Christians, we're too prone to want to say no. You know, I had one pastor that I heard one day, they had a school, and the headmaster of the school had told the kids they couldn't do something. And so the pastor called and said, why'd you tell them that? He said, because every once in a while you just have to let them know who's in charge and you can't say no. He fired the headmaster. He said, we have to tell them no on crucial things. We want to find a way to tell them yes on the things that aren't you know, so crucial.
I was with Ambassador Brownback yesterday, and we had a breakfast, and I was sitting at the table with 2 Catholic priests, with the Presbyterian pastor, and some others that have said some things about me particularly. And yet we all united behind one thing. So there was unity on certain issues, although there's plenty of disagreement on other things. And you do, again, this goes back to one of the things we said at the very beginning, that there are some Christians who are so committed or dogmatic about certain things that, like, for instance, I am a pro-lifer to the max. But I guarantee you, if I had a choice between somebody who was liberal and pro-abortion, and yet the other 9 things were all right, I would vote for them over somebody who was totally against everything. But there's some people, I'll never vote for that. That's just an issue that they live or die on. And you can't be that way and have unity.
It's very difficult to have that. And unity, what I always tell people is, I don't even ask people to compromise. I've never asked anybody to compromise. What I ask them to do is help me find common ground. And that's a big difference. So if you have a principle, and I don't want you to change your principle, but let's talk until we can find common ground, because that's how we get solutions to solve our
Starting
problem.
point.
It's a starting point.
Okay.
Let's get one more in, or maybe
We have another one, a provincial, I think that's how you say your name. On chat, it says, Congressman Forbes and Andrew, governor primary election coming up soon. Any suggestions on how to vote? Knowing one candidate may not make it, do I vote for him or go with the majority of the other 2 candidates and hope the choice would be right?
Always tough. I know this sounds like a cop-out. It really isn't. But with our Prayer Caucus Foundation, what we decided early on was we were going to fight the fights that we thought were important, which was prayer, faith, freedom of religion. And we didn't get hung up on issues, and we didn't get hung up on picking winners and losers. I would tell people that one of the things that I always do is, if you have, just like what Andrew was just saying earlier, if I have somebody that I agree with on about 90% of the issues, I'm going to probably support that person who can get in and do something versus somebody that I might agree with more, but maybe has a 10% chance of winning.
Yeah, excellent.
one more.
Okay, one more. So,
Did I catch you off guard?
no, it's okay. Michael on Facebook says this, as a republic, why do our hired government officials refuse to turn over information they request? We, the people, voted them into office. They represent us. The hired government employees should honor their request. Why?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that is another misnomer, and we don't always understand, we kind of look at the government as monolithic, and that there's some big government that's holding everything. Government's multifaceted, and so you find members of Congress fighting to get information out of the Pentagon and out of the Justice Department, the Justice Department trying to get information over here. That's an age-old problem. It's not just government. It's fighting to get the truth out. It's a challenge. It goes back to what Andrew said.
Yeah.
It's not just government, it's us as individuals trying to find what true facts are so we can make decisions. It's going to always be a challenge in a free democracy, but it's one we just roll up our sleeves and continue to fight it.
You know, we're just about out of time, but I've got to ask one more question. Trump promised to drain the swamp. I wouldn't say that the swamp has been drained, but it's gone down enough that you can sure see the critters. And it's exposed a lot of stuff. Where do you think we are in turning this around and getting rid of some of this corruption?
Well, first of all, I think we have to recognize that while it looks like everybody is corrupt, everybody's not corrupt. I come back to what I said earlier. There are some wonderful people getting up every day, fighting for their country, doing what they think is right. The problem is with the news cycle, when we hear it enough and people, laser in on it, we start believing that every pastor is corrupt, that every politician is corrupt. It's not true, and we need to be careful and divide the wheat from the chaff.
So my question.
You go.
I got a question. So how do we pray for Congress? How do we pray for you? How do we pray for leaders in our nation specifically? If you said, if you could pray for us in this area, it would be a really big blessing.
I would say two things. I think as leaders in the country, to give us the strategies we need to implement the environment where people can come to a true knowledge of the faith. And then the second thing is to pray for their families and the personal things that they're going through. People think everybody that goes to Congress doesn't have a family, doesn't cut the grass, doesn't have paper. I mean, that's just a myth. And they're wrestling with all the same things everybody else does. And when those things get so overwhelming, it's very difficult for them to focus on the big issues that are
And
there.
I can imagine that if you were really being criticized as Trump is and your children are being attacked, and I mean, it would make the average person withdraw.
And that's what frightens me, Andrew. More and more people that I know who are wonderful, good people are saying,
I'm going to protect my family. And
I'm getting out of it. Why should I put myself
And so
through
that
this?
leaves the government in the hands of the ungodly.
That's right.
Okay.
That's a shame.
Okay.
So you guys have heard how to pray. That's important.
Okay.
Man, this is good. We could have gone a
Yes,
lot
it could.
longer than this. But thank you for watching. And we are going to put notes out about this, and we are going to have a lot of information. We also have this giveaway, so you can still sign up for that and enter to be the one that we bless with this book. And there's just a lot of other things. Congressman, we appreciate you being with
thank
us,
you.
and I
It's an
believe
honor.
this
Thank
will
you,
not
Carrie.
be our
Thank you.
last time. I just
Yeah.
feel like, man, he is such a blessing, and we're fighting the same battle, and so we're going to keep going together.
Thank you, guys.
Amen. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. And remember that we do this every Tuesday night. It's broadcast live all around the world. So join us. Let somebody else know about it. You can go to our website and you can actually see the archive copy of this and play it for someone else. Let them know about it.
And then the Truth and Liberty, we're talking about a lot more issues like this. So again, that's a great place, truthandliberty.net. And then gospeltruth.tv. Again, keep your faith alive so that you know how to stand boldly. So
thank you
check
for
out those
being a
things.
part of it. God bless you. We love you. We'll see you next week.
Join us next Tuesday for our live Bible study. To receive notes and to win giveaways, visit our website.
I couldn't walk without a limp. I couldn't hop like this, and now I could even run.
The power of God is way more powerful than the little ALS, and that's the healing that I received.
You need to stir yourself up. Jesus has already healed us.
Join Andrew Wommack, Audrey Mack, Barry Bennett, Randy Clark, Daniel Amstutz, and Carly Teradez at Healing is Here 2018, August 14th through 17th. Find out how to walk in God's promises of health and wholeness, both physically and emotionally. To learn more, call 719-635-1111 or visit our website.
Hello, this is Andrew Wommack, and I'd like to encourage you to check out our Gospel Truth TV. That's gospeltruth.tv. It's an internet-based television network And you are not only going to get my teaching, but you are also going to hear instructors from Charis Bible College. You got well-known people on there like Kenneth Copeland, Creflo Dollar, Jesse Duplantis, Keith Moore. These are all people that are friends of mine. We have differences and variances, but we're all preaching the same thing, and it's a safe place to be. You are going to be blessed. So check it out. It's 24/7, gospeltruth.tv.
In a complex world, it can be hard to see what God is saying. But when you look and listen with spiritual eyes and ears, many times the writing is on the wall. In his new series, Find, Follow, and Fulfill, Andrew Wommack shares what the Bible says about fulfilling your dreams and ambitions. With this guidance, you'll gain clear perspective of where God is leading you. To learn more about the God's Will package, visit our website today. Stop wondering, start knowing.
God is going to call you to do something that's bigger than yourself so that you will have to trust in Him.
Charis is great because you're in an environment of a bunch of like-minded people, and so because of that, like your callings and the giftings that God's placed inside of you are quickened.
I found my purpose. I found my identity.
When you receive salvation, He said, I put a good deposit in you. I've put all of my kingdom inside of you. I've put all righteousness and all healing and all power and all ability to change nations inside of you. So now what are you doing to guard that good deposit?
And after 2 years, I'm stepping out, seeing people healed in the streets. I'm praying for people in hospitals. We're seeing legs grow out. And it's just like from where I was when I first came to Campus Days to where I am now, I'm like a totally different person.
Man, these guys are going out and doing the book of Acts. They're seeing people's lives change, healed, saved, delivered. And it's right here at Charis Bible College.
I tell you what, if God's with you, you can do anything. You can go anywhere. You'll have the resources to get it done.
We're not here to play religion. We're here to change your lives so that you can go change the world. Amen.
Gospel Truth TV Business is how you can receive the godly advice to grow your business and leadership potential. Tune in Saturdays from 9 to noon Eastern to hear Andrew's friends share the kingdom principles that have helped them succeed.
You can produce death with your words, or you can produce life with your words.
When you go into something like that and commit to be a finisher, you will see success.
Learn proven business principles every Saturday from 9 to noon Eastern on Gospel Truth TV Business.